Well, should we start with just to kind of get centered before we start our episode today? Take a deep breath and just feel present so we can share our time intentionally together and with our listeners. Kind of shake off our day, shake off the dogs barking in the background, and just hang out. And today's topic is artificial intelligence and technology. And Sharmin and I did a duo episode on our own when everyone was on holidays on artificial intelligence, and we talked a bit about AI and what it meant to us, and so we can kind of go over that and get your take on what you're feeling about AI. But we also have been talking about how virtual reality plays into this, specifically the good, the bad, the scary, the ugly. So I don't know who's been using AI, who's been looking at virtual reality, and do you have the good and the bad?
Now, I've been doing a lot with the AI, artificial intelligence. I've been using Chat GPT for, creating sort of the starting off point for content. So, sort of giving it some ideas, asking it to outline like a chapter or talking points or things like that, and then building on it. And I've been using Mid-Journey, playing around with that, trying, creating various images and things and trying to figure out how to get the same character to show up and then be able to be in different poses and different things so that you could use it in different settings, which I'm still working on, but I'm finding it, it's exciting. There's so many different things coming out, but I mean, that's part of the problem, right? There must be 785 brand new AI apps that have come out in the last few weeks alone, right? So it's how do you weed through and find what are the good things and learn how to use them, and everything takes time, right? So that's what I'm finding, is that it's easy to get sucked in and just be enjoying playing around with it and doing it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh geez, 4 hours just went by, oh crap. So trying to really be allotted time and focus and exploring it, because it's pretty exciting stuff that it can do.
Tell us more about your experience with Mid-Journey. And just for our audience, Mid-Journey is an image AI, right? And they both, all of them are generative AI, but some people may not know what Mid-Journey is.
Yeah, so Mid-Journey is exactly it. You use it to create images. And I mean, with any of the artificial intelligence, the AI technology, the big thing is learning how to create the right prompts to get the result that you want. And then when you finally figure out what are those correct prompts, or when you have, gotten them from some recommendations from someone else on those prompts, then saving them and being able to reuse them again. So, in Mid-Journey, you can tell it, for example, to create a picture of a beautiful lady walking down the beach. So that would be one instruction, imagine, and then you tell it to do that. But if you said the same thing but added in, make it photorealistic using this type of camera and this type of lens, it'll give you a different output. Or if you said, create this character in the Disney style or the Pixar style, or in the style of, any particular artist, it will adapt and create the image based on the prompts that you give it. So like, that's the biggest thing with it, is learning how to create the right prompts for what you want it to do. And that takes some time and some playing around with and looking at what others are doing. And I belong actually to something called the AI Experts Club with Alicia Little, and we'll put the information in the show notes. And she does training every week on the stuff. And then there's a whole, there's courses on all of the different things. So Mid-Journey, ChatGPT, and different technologies that she's found. And I'm finding it really helpful, because she's kind of doing through some of the weeding, and then I can kind of go through and sort of say, okay, here's where I want to focus, or here's what the ideas and tips are and things like that. So, I think that's a good idea, is to kind of look, and obviously YouTube, there's tons of information on there as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mitzy. Thank you for that. Kit?
I am not a Mitzy when it comes to AI at all. Thank you for asking her to explain what that was, because I had no idea. Midjourney. And then, oh my goodness, like the camera and the lens and the style. And my mind just blew a little bit there as you were sharing all that, Mitzi. I'm really of two minds with AI. Like yeah. And for me, I love when I have my own website, and when I'm in there updating my website, there's a pop-up, would you like to use AI to help you with this? And so I just ignored it many, many, many times. And I was like, well, let's see what this does. So I just played around, and oh my goodness, what it wrote out. I was reading to my husband. I was like, this is great. Like the way that they took parts of what I wanted. And for me personally, and all I can speak of is for me, is I wouldn't copy and paste, but I definitely would copy and paste and put it in a file. And then you go back and take bits and pieces out of it and weave it with me. Because I really, yeah, for me, there's a part of it that it needs to just be me. And I'm very far away from using AI in the way that I see people doing. And I think I'm even very far away from putting the time that it would need to learn. And I do note that I get some emails from people in the first, at the end or at the beginning this was created by me, not AI. And those kinds of things like that, and so I think there's definitely, and I know that there's been talk of AI for some time, but it sure has come online this last year, I think. Just, it seems like gangbusters and everybody's using it. And what I would share is I was at a conference. I'm also a school trustee. And so I was at a conference about education, and this brilliant man who, I can't remember his name right now, but when I find it, I'll put it in the notes. And his philosophy on what school should look like is so in line with my philosophy. Like he talks about, why aren't we teaching kids what they already love? Why do we focus so much on what isn't their passions? Why do we look at where they're already achieving and kind of brush that aside, and then really put a lot of emphasis on this quote education gap? He's like, what does that even mean? And what if we lived in a world that we were just focusing on what kids loved? But what he shared was this little guy in grade 4 had to write a paper on butterflies. And so he just plunked in what was needed into AI. And a big, long university style paper came out, and he was like, shorter. And so it just came shorter, shorter. All he had to say to the thing was shorter, 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 till it looked like, oh yeah, grade 4, you wrote this, did not know one thing about butterflies, and handed it in. So it really is, as you know, I have kids, and and as Mitzy was speaking, and I looked at my phone, and I'm of a time when a phone was connected to a wall and all you did was talk on it, and it had a long cord. Like, that's my childhood. That's not my kids' childhood. Like, they've always, like, they can't believe I lived before the internet. Like, that blows their mind. And that there was life before the internet, maybe. So I don't know where I sit with AI. I'm curious. And yeah, I know nothing like Mitzy knows. And that was just that little tiny, I'm sure, is like the top of a pin for what is AI. And that was quite, wow. Thanks for the question, Sharmin.
You're very welcome. And thank you. And thank you for being so open and honest, because I'm sure you have connected with many of our listeners, because AI is foreign to a lot of people, a lot of the population. AI became known to many because of ChatGPT. But before ChatGPT, there have been hundreds and hundreds of artificial intelligence software, right? You may receive an email from someone, and it's a well-written email before ChatGPT. And if you weren't aware, you would not know that it was written by AI. For some people, when I'm speaking to a person, I would say, go to the bottom of the email. What does it say? It might say something, contact, whatever, but whatever the software is at the bottom of the email. And this is before this, predated ChatGPT. But now we have ChatGPT and everyone is excited about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an open access, but I think it's at the end of July, Meta, which is Facebook, actually launched Llama 2. And Llama 2 is like, they said in a couple of months or in a couple of years, Llama 2 is going to outrun ChatGPT, because it's not open access, but it's an open source. And the difference between the two is that an open source, anyone can use the source code and create something, create another app, create something from Llama 2, while ChatGPT is closed and you cannot do that. So yeah, and Llama 2 is available at no cost while you have to subscribe to ChatGPT. And I am very passionate about AI. Even before ChatGPT, it's like when ChatGPT came out, it was sent to me and I didn't use it because I had so many other tools I was trying to learn. And there is this particular software that I was teaching my voice, teaching how I write, how I speak. Wow. And so I ignored ChatGPT. And when ChatGPT blew up, I was like, I have never used it and it's been in my inbox for a few months. But yeah, I did a lot of research on on artificial intelligence, because despite we may not like it, it's the way that the world is going. Because I think it's in June, Walmart's CEO said by 2025, which is within 2 years, 67% of the Walmarts are going to be automated, right? So despite we may not, we're not into it, it is advancing, and there is so much research that is behind artificial intelligence. And I'm going to stop because,
Well, I liked what Kate was talking about at school, because, and Sharmin and I were having this conversation. There's teachers that look at something as ChatGPT as almost plagiarism. And we've had this conversation many times at my school where it's not plagiarism. It is absolutely, because you're still inputting your ideas. You're still, and you really should not be copying and pasting, because ChatGPT does repetition. It's not perfect. But the other side of that is it makes a written essay completely accessible for our neurodivergent kids. So we've got our our kids who are cognitively very high functioning, but don't have the output, the written expression. And so they're lumped into this. They can't do it, only have them do one sentence, give them a scribe. Look what the world opens up for these kids now. Adults as well. But I mean, for kids, it just levels that playing field so that they are also able to create and express their ideas and what they cognitively have in their brain that they just don't have that written expression output available to them. So I love this. I think this is, this is a wonder material for these kids to be able to access and move forward with as they become adults and have to fill out resumes or whatever. I mean, it's amazing. I took a course just to see what it was like. I think Sharmin actually talked to me about AI first, this ChatGPT. I don't know what the heck was going on. And then I took a course, and in this course, they were like, okay, we're going to write an ebook on ChatGPT. And they took us through step by step how to do it. You pick the topic. And so that I would, put in minimal information. It would spit out the suggestions. And then I would say, okay, I want it in the tone of Oprah Winfrey. And it would come out with compassion and, empathy. Or and then I changed it. I wanted in the tone of comedy, and it would come out with these dad jokes included in my information. It was just incredible how it worked. And so there are some disadvantages, 100%, but I'm looking at the positive side as we talk about this right now, especially when it talks to accessibility. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that, as you say, it opens up for, I think back to my kids who had some issues with learning, and, they had to have a laptop, and at one point somebody describe and how, this technology now, it would make it so much easier if they were allowed to be using that type of thing. It's like, when calculators came out, right? Like everybody used to have to do it all manual. I remember my father-in-law, I mean, he could add 10-digit numbers in his head because that's how he learned math. By the time I got to school, we were using like a basic calculator. Then they became the advanced calculators. But when you were doing tests, you weren't allowed to use that, right? And now you've got your smartphones, and right. I mean, the reality is we are now hitting one of those massive change points within the world, the same way as there was, we went from a farming society, industrialization. This is another significant, major, it will change everything kind of thing. And the world will look very different 5-10 years from now. And when you look at things, like Star Trek or the Jetsons, and you think about some of the technology they showed there that was like so far out there that you couldn't even fathom. Well, you know what? Take a look at the cell phones that you're using now, and that stuff that seems so far out and couldn't exist is actually what is coming to fruition now. And will that then create a society that, people are freed up from doing, like it used to take, for example, if you were doing your, a bunch of videos and you were wanting to post reels or things like that. I was just on a seminar, and she was saying, it would take 2 days in the studio and then 3 months worth of editing, and you get the videos out. Now with some of the apps that you can use on your smartphone, you can create that same content in 3 to 4 hours. So, what took 75 hours takes 3 hours now. And that's a huge change, right? So it's going to be very, very significant and massively change everything. And we're at the beginning of the revolution, so we've got to hop on.
It's even in the medical field, it has changed. All the laparoscopic surgeries, most of them are done by robots. The surgeries that, now all you have is maybe 5 little holes in your abdomen, and it's a major surgery. And so the recovery time is not as before when you had the old way of doing surgeries. There is Neuralink. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Neuralink. It enables a person with paralysis to use a computer or a phone with their brain activity alone.
That's such an amazing technology. And look how that frees somebody up who couldn't communicate now to be able to communicate. I mean, that is life-changing.
Yeah. And that is now it's being, in the research stage. And I think that's revolutionary for persons with paralysis.
What else just came to mind when you said that, Sharmin, was that robots are doing the surgeries now. Is I live very rural. And like I shared, I don't know that it was shared with everybody, but both of my kids had surgery at back to back because the surgeon only comes to the community a few times a year. And so just when you share that, it's not a person, it's a robot. What does that look like for people being able to access I'm just thinking of all the things that I know from living rural where assessments, there's 2 to 3 year waits. right? Like all when you need to see a specialist, the amount of wait that there is. And I know that AI and a robot aren't going to, well, who knows, but today aren't going to take the place of a specialist assessment. However, seeing a specialist and getting an assessment is different than booking your operating time and everything. And if that's done by a robot, and just that whole process of, yeah. And what else comes to mind is burnout, like both sides of AI and burnout. But if it's not a surgeon having to do surgery all the time, that gives a break from burnout. However, I was just, when Mitzy shared about something that she was just in, I was just in, and hearing that women entrepreneurs are hitting like a 50% of burnout. And so then I wonder of needing to, quote, learn more of where that puts, or to catch up, or this is happening, like just where that puts women. And I just speak of women because that's where I live, where that puts women now in let's do more. Yeah. So I don't know. When Mitzy was talking, I was like, oh, I think I'm going back to the farming age.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, the virtual assistant software is a tool that we can use, and it takes away bulk work that we do and can help with burnout because we're not doing the work. Once you input your information and you do that regularly, it does the work for you. So for me, it's just become familiar with the technology that is available. I don't think we can escape where artificial intelligence is going and what it is doing. I was viewing a documentary, and there's discussions about universal wages because of what artificial intelligence is going to be doing a bulk of work, especially first line workers, like in the fast food restaurants. And so they're thinking about universal wages for those workers. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there on artificial intelligence. For me, when I started reading the research, I'm like, we are so far behind, and this technology is advanced. I can tell you that, way advanced, and we are now catching up because of ChatGPT. And thank God for ChatGPT, because it has opened our eyes to what AI is and what AI is doing. And that was being done long before ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is, it is, I mean, other countries are very much, there's a lot of them that are very much ahead of us with their technology and their use and their training and their teaching in schools and all these things of this technology. And, we as North Americans have to get up to speed, because otherwise we're going to get left behind. And I mean, if you look at things, I was just thinking, something Kate said made me kind of think of it was, I remember there was a thing at Disney World, and you used to sort of go around, and it sort of took you through this family as they went through different time. I can't remember what it was called, but you were in a little circle thing and you went around, it moved, and you saw them sort of, the 1800s, and then, refrigeration coming in, these different things, and how the technology changed things. And you think back to, washing clothes. How long did it take to wash clothes back when you had to use a bucket and your soap and your string, and then you had to, wring it out and then hang it up? And okay, so let's say that was, 7 hours. Well, when the washing machine and the dryer came, all of a sudden that same task went from being a 7-hour task to being, a 35-minute task, because you put it in the washer, put it in the dryer, and then you have to allocate the time to fold it, which is always the part that takes the longest. Sometimes weeks. But but it's that kind of, it's change that we are seeing and going through, because the artificial intelligence is speeding up so many types of tasks, copywriting, right? Like you used to, coming up with the ideas and brainstorming and stuff like that. Now that part of it is so much easier to do. But as you say, you have to add your personal touch to it, because people still need that human connection. And that's the big danger, I think, is losing that human connection. And of course, the other big thing, which to Kate's point, which is, I think, really, the scary side of artificial intelligence. And from what Sharmin said too, right? You can clone your voice. Well, hello, if you can clone your voice, someone else can clone your voice.
Yeah.
And people can be using your cloned voice for nefarious purposes. And how do we protect ourselves against that? And, you know, all of the stuff with identity theft and all these things, as this technology gets better and better, it's going to be harder and harder to detect. Was it in fact Mitzy speaking, or was it an AI that I created for my stuff, or is it somebody stole my voice and is using it for something I never intended it for? And that, I think, is the big challenge that is going to hit, because unfortunately the criminals seem to be brilliant at figuring out how to scam and things and spend a lot of time, versus Joe average person who, you know, wouldn't even cross their mind to sort of use it in that bad way. So that, I think, is, you know, I'm curious as to what you guys think about that sort of thing, or what you've heard about how people are protecting themselves against it, or just give me some thoughts on that.
Good, unmute.
I just wanted to say, I guess as an artist, and knowing like with the writer's strike, what everything is about, protecting your image, that AI has a lot to do with it, where actors, when they sign contracts, like now they're making movies, they don't have to be in the movie, and you're giving away pretty much your right to, you know, just have it used whichever way. So that's a big problem. And I guess as a poet and an artist, it's a little scary for me. I see people write poetry just, you know, from AI. And I know that it's a tool, that's the way we're going. But I think it's like to be careful with it as well, as far as our rights, because it's just like, I think you were saying something about another llama, I think you said, Shama.
Llama tree.
In the beginning, when all these extra apps came, it was like people didn't pay attention that you were giving your rights to your personal information. So we just did it and we used the app. So things start out free, and then later they get out, you know, developed, and then they're not free anymore. So I'm sure that's going to be a part of it. But it's scary as far as, you know, just identity and what can, like you said, what can be used and it's not you. And so like an e-document, like we sign those all the time. Like now, after I watched this show and it took this lady's personal life, it was really scary. And I was like, I'm gonna really read my DocuSign from now on, because it's, you know, when people say your image and likeness, that's you. And so you might sign for one thing, but that goes on forever. And they can take that and use it in another way. And you won't have any rights because you signed it. So I'm still a newbie, but I know it's the way of the future, and it's a lot of good that can come from it. But I think we should also be cautious and maybe a little reluctant, and just not fully investigating how it's going to impact our futures, because it definitely will.
I'm super concerned about the senior population when it comes to these voiceovers, is what's happened. It has happened to someone I know where they got a call and they are 75 years old, and the voice was their granddaughter calling him the name that she called him. Hi, Papa. I've been in an accident. I need you to, I don't have any money. I need you to send me a credit card in order to pay for the tow truck. And luckily, he is the most non-believer of anything. And he just didn't take it for 1 second. But that's, who is that about our population of, you know, 75 to 95-year-olds who are picking up the phone? You know, how many people is this going to fool? And how many, I mean, it's on, you know, it's on the news all the time. It's all, you know, this phishing and this, it's all the same. And it's, you know, anyone can be susceptible to it or vulnerable to it, but I really think that our seniors are more vulnerable because they don't have the radar that we would have, answering a phone or listening to a recording or getting a strange email. Like, I think, lucky for us, our radar is on, but that does really frighten me. And I don't know, it happens though, right? We get these big waves of technology or big thinkers come in and everything comes forward, and then we have to backpedal the security. Then, do you know what I mean? And that scares me. That really frightens me. And I don't know how we get around that.
Yeah, I'm working with a company. They were supposed to launch well over, I guess, about 14 months ago. And they started the launching process and they had to basically halt everything because there were so many different scammers doing all these types of different things that they hadn't anticipated, that they had to basically freeze everything and start to add in all these different layers of security and different things because they had never imagined all of the nefarious ways that somebody could try and use the system. But of course, the criminals looked at it right away and, they seem to just shine with that. And it's taken, as I say, I think it's delayed the company's launch. By the time they actually launch, it'll probably be 18 months, primarily because of those types of things that you're talking about, just people attacking systems and things like that. So it's definitely, a huge concern. And I think we've seen it with, ransomware attacks on hospitals and on communication systems and things like that. That's the other side of it. Because again, the technology is getting so advanced that it can do things that, we just couldn't even imagine 5-10 years ago.
I mean, if they can attack the government security or they can break through the government security codes, what else wouldn't they break through? I was listening to a program yesterday. The host for the program said that North America is way behind with the policies and procedures and laws on artificial intelligence. They just passed the bill. And one of the experts said that the bill is just paper. They're just pushing paper around and creating a document to say that it's a bill. But when you compare it with what the EU has done thus far, it's incomparable. And for me, one of the scariest things of artificial intelligence is there's no restriction, right? There are no laws governing it. No one knows what countries like North Korea, China is way advanced in artificial intelligence because they have facial recognition for all in their streets, right? And facial recognition, it's like one of the most sophisticated types of generative AI, because you can use those facial recognition and begin to assess people's emotions, which is where they're going with that. So because there are no laws restricting artificial intelligence, no one knows what countries are doing. The EU, as I think, is the only countries that have some restrictions and some laws, a bit of control over that. I think they're advanced more than North America, but we don't know what Asia is doing. I don't know if you look at some of the dances or artistic forms that come out of India, artificial intelligence, they use it well in artistry.
Yeah, and to your point, Sharmin, is the other thing is, I mean, we are a global world now, and the people who are using the technology, they can be in any country. And just because, if they're based in Africa as an example, and they're doing something here, well, if they do something illegal, trying to catch them and deal with it, I mean, like all of those, when seniors get scammed and the money goes, and they send the gift cards and the wire transfers and things like that. I mean, people report it, but I mean, the money never gets recovered because it goes to other countries. And that's the same issue we're going to have on a much bigger scale as AI becomes, more and more advanced. And it takes society time to catch up with how to deal with that side of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And just to touch on what you said about artistry, Sharmin, my son, he writes songs and plays music and creates, and quite a few years ago he came and started showing me what was being created with AI. And I really didn't get it. I don't even know really right now if I even still really get it. Right, like he'd show me artwork and he's like, this is all done with AI, mama. And I said, right. However, a person had to put those ideas in. And he's like, not necessarily, and would like try to explain to me. And that's not how my mind works. So I would try to listen and he would, but the point being, it's so hard for our kids to follow their passions as it is. There's, especially if their passions are around the artistic fields, I feel there's such a push to, I mean, I find the education system is really pushed one way. It's really academia pushed. It's not necessarily everywhere, but that could really be a push, right? And I think of these kids who are so artistic and they have these passions and these ideas and these visions. And there's already this big push. Well, you better have a plan B. I mean, I don't think that's ever been uttered in this house. It's like, go do whatever you need to do, follow it. But I think of, kids that don't have that and they want this to be their way. And now there's this on top of it, right? It seems like this other layer of, well, first off, is my stuff going to get stolen? And like Griff's always like, artists aren't making money anymore, mama, like artists really aren't making money anymore. And I don't know if my heads are in the clouds or but I really believe you follow your passion. It will be. And, but I feel for these kids growing up in this completely different world than, I think then we can even really imagine where they do something. And I think of bars, my God, they let your phone in the bar. Like, thank goodness. I could not imagine, like, and that lives with you forever. Those things that you do that, you're growing, you're learning, you're experimenting, you make bad choices. And then I think then that bad choice is kept forever. And then that bad choice can be replicated or whatever it can be done. Yeah, I just wanted to put that in that mix too of AI.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As you say, nowadays, whatever you do lives on forever, right? If it's captured by a phone, then, it lives on forever. And that's both a blessing and a curse, two sides of a coin, right? So like everything, there's advantages and disadvantages, but especially as you say, I mean, we all did stupid things when we were kids. Everybody does. That's part of the growing process, making mistakes, learning from them, going on. But now it gets documented forever and can come back and haunt you 10, 15, 25 years. Whereas when we did it, it was done and there, that was it. It happened and, you forget about it, move on. Now it's like, oh no, it happens and it follows you wherever you go.
To piggyback on what you said, Mitzy, no one had phones at that time. Now, anything that is done, there is a phone out, someone is recording. And I was sharing with a relative, I don't know if people enjoy going out anymore because every time when you're out, there is someone with their phone recording. there's no privacy anymore, especially when you're socializing, and the most you can do is turn your back from the camera, but you can't tell them don't record you. I really think they need to make a law to cease the recording in social activities. People are at weddings and they're recording. Yeah, it's annoying to me.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting when, 3 months from now or 6 months from now, if we do another session on artificial intelligence and just how much will have changed in that short time, because the reality is stuff is changing so fast now. And, if you look even a year ago, right, just how much more technology it is. And COVID, advanced a lot of it too, because as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, when all of a sudden nobody could leave their house and certain things that you used to do face to face in person, but you still had to figure out, how can we still do this? I mean, I'm a real estate broker. We were a mandatory service, so we could still go show houses, but getting documents signed and things like that, we always had to do it in person. There was no exception. But during COVID, they had to advance and came out with things like DocuSign, so we could get signatures and ways to confirm somebody's identification and things like that. So it brought forward and sped up the timeline. All of those things were going to happen, but they probably were on a 10-year plan, and all of a sudden they had to be on a 6-month plan, right? So that's the other thing. And that's why, too, I think there's a lot of kind of backfilling now to try and put in the security systems and put in the laws and put the things, because everybody had a race to try and solve the problem. And now it's like, okay, well, we solved this problem, but all of a sudden it created a whole bunch of other problems that we have to look at, because we never had time to beta test it and to kind of look at it from all these other ways. And that's what we're feeling now, is that massive change, and that how do we go back and, put some of these protections in place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I'm glad you said that about doing another episode, because as we're talking, I'm thinking, let's do a sequel on this one. But can we commit to each one of us picking a project and just playing with ChatGPT or AI, period, whether it's virtual reality? I know we talked a little bit about that, and we probably have to do a whole other episode with virtual reality, I've done some research into it, the good, the bad on that. And it's really interesting, the things that came out of that, but anyway, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Cheryl, I have to tell you, I think it was hilarious that you said, can we commit to a project? Because what I was thinking was like, oh, well, when we come back in 3 to 6 months, everyone will update me on what's happening with AI.
See, she has a system. She knows her system. It's like, let everybody else figure it out. Give me the summary and I'm good to
go. That's funny. Well, this has been really cool. What do you think, Sharmin?
It was, and I hope we revisit it in 3 months. And I love your idea, and we may need to do a separate episode on virtual reality, because I really think it's different.
Yeah, I think an episode on virtual reality would be really interesting, because again, that technology has changed so much, and I think it would be really interesting to kind of explore that.
So we embrace technology, we inspire with a new knowledge and new things to learn and create, and then we can empower ourselves by knowing the safety and the parameters around protecting ourselves. And I think that's really important. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Transforming Lives Panel Podcast. We hope that you receive some nuggets of wisdom and seeds to plant along your journey of transformation. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we encourage you to let us know and to share us with those that matter in your life. If you would like to connect with anyone from the panel or our guest speaker, you can find all of the ways to connect in our show notes. We have so much gratitude for you, and we are so thankful to be a part of your day. Until next time, take great care.